I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Leo Birenberg and Zach Robinson, composers for Weird Al Yankovic Story. Guys, I'm so excited. Your first Emmy nomination, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
So talk me through it. Like, you've been on this journey before with Cobra Kai, and you guys have been working together for some time. You finally get nominated by your peers. What was that morning like?
Surreal, probably. I like had music due for another project, and so I was very behind on it and got up at like 5 a.m. and was sitting there with headphones on, like pounding away. And then around, I don't know, what time does the news break? Like 8 or something?
45 or something.
Our publicist called us both, and I just saw the phone ring and I was like, oh wait, I think Emmy nominations come out today. And that was it.
Unlike Leo, I was hyper aware and I was trying to like do other work, and I was just like, God, because we've been down this path before, and like, there are years where we thought kind of Cobra Kai had a good shot, and we've just been like kind of bummed out by that. But so we've just learned to kind of like move on from it when it doesn't happen. And I think, when I saw his name come up, I kind of knew we got it, because he would not have called if we didn't get it. But it was awesome. I mean, like, I got married in May, and I got more calls and messages on that day than I did around my wedding or my engagement or anything. Like, more people like reached out about it.
That's what your friends really care about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's
Hollywood, baby.
I know.
It's
just don't tell my wife.
No. It's all about the Emmys, man. Everyone, I mean, that is just such an honor. You will always now be referred to as Emmy nominated composers, and hopefully one day Emmy winning composers. Let's talk about your work on this film, which I freaking loved. I didn't know really what to expect. I went into it blind, and I just loved the tone. I love it how it's so wildly satirical. It's loosely based on Weird Al and his life and career, but it's so unique in its tone. So did that playful tongue-in-cheek vibe, how did that inform how you wanted to tackle creating the music on the film when you first signed up?
Yeah, what's awesome about the tone of the movie is like, so much of it is caught up in Daniel's amazing performance as Al, which is like so deadpan, even though it's hysterical. And while the story like spirals out of control as it goes on, the music is kind of always playing it straight. And that was the discussion immediately with the director, Eric, who we both worked with before, on how, like, where the score was going to fit into this storytelling. Is that it was the music's job to always make the audience buy in to this idea that we are telling a great American hero story in the way you might see like a biopic or, a fictionalized thing like this from like the early 1990s. Like we were really like looking at the early 90s as a source of inspiration.
Yeah, I just think also, like, I just wonder, there must have been a degree of entrenched like expectation from Al's legions of fans about what the music on this film probably would have sounded like. It could, I was expecting something maybe super silly or like just full of accordion and nothing else, and I'm so glad that you just did not go down those kind of expected routes, and you went to something that was really grand and really earnest, just like Daniel's performance. It's really heartfelt, it's meaningful, even though we know this is kind of silly and satirical because that's the whole tone of it. That's a really difficult needle to thread, isn't it, Zach? Like, it's difficult to get that right.
I joke about how this is like the most sincere film score we'll ever write, because
Yes.
like it is actually, and most traditional, I should say. Like it is a very traditional film score, give or take, the diner fight, or, some of the other set pieces that are in there. But, the overall tone is this, as Leo said, it's got this early 90s Silvestri style Americana score, which you just don't hear that much anymore. And we were given this opportunity to tell this great American hero story, and this was the natural palette. So it always felt like this was the route we were going to go down. I don't know when we're ever going to do this again. Like, it's very much like, I don't know if people even like these types of scores in their projects anymore. Like, we get a little bit of leeway because it is a parody, but as we always do, we approach this score with love, and admiration for the style. We're never making fun of it. It always comes from a place of admiration. So it was just such a blast to do it.
It's critical to the success of the film that the music does that, because I just think it could have just not really hit those marks if the music felt like it was also a parody of music. Like it's so meta, because it kind of is, but it's so grand and beautiful to listen to. Like, for example, that's the track where Al and Madonna, played beautifully by Evan Rachel Wood, kind of ripping each other's clothes off, is so good. It's so beautiful and romantic and rousing. Like, Leo, like, what was the thinking behind doing something so grand and orchestral for that moment when they're together?
Eric said that whole scene, the only real word he told us was he wanted it to sound opulent. Like, from the minute the doorbell rings and she's coming in, and he was like, just write something beautiful. Like, it doesn't need to hit every beat of their conversation. Like, set this tone. And then what's really interesting is when the music swells, and they start making out and destroying the house on their, furious path to the bedroom. That's actually our second version, because we originally did something where when they start to kiss, it switches into like a Madonna synth pop vibe, which I don't even remember. That was the initial discussion of what to do. And we did it and it worked cool. And we played it back, and Eric and Al were both like, oh, now that we hear the cue before this, like, it feels like it should just like take off. And so we said, okay, let's go back and just, I think, pounded out the second version like in an afternoon. It was like one of those, like, someone gives you the leash and suddenly you take off into Rachmaninoff land and just do something crazy.
Oh, I just love that. And Zach, what surprised you most about working with Al? He was so hands-on on part of the production of the film. He wrote a song for it. It's not often that would happen when the film's based on a real life person, that this person's so integral to the production. So what was that like?
I was surprised at how involved he was. He co-wrote the movie, so this like really was like a brainchild of his too. So he was around, and I actually don't know how often is the case where, like, I think any other musician, Brian May co-writing Bohemian Rhapsody would not have worked. So like Al is able to do it, it was really awesome to just have him be involved, and not just to mention, we were obviously starstruck and had to get over that, the initial hump of just Al being on a Zoom with us constantly. And like he was on tour while he was like giving us notes. He would go on stage in the middle of like a Zoom session, come back after playing for like 5,000 people. And he had just a lot of thoughtful like notes and thoughtful thoughts about tone. And him and Eric have an amazing relationship, and really like collaborate well together. And he was just an awesome collaborator. And it's been really nice to get to know him also just like over this kind of like awards push in just the past year of being at premieres and functions with him. And, he shoots us emails and is always like the first to congratulate us, like on Emmy nom. He sent us an email like that, within 10 minutes. He's just like the coolest guy. So it was so a pleasure. Nice.
Yeah,
like a saint embodied in human flesh.
Yes. And if I was working with him, I would be pinching myself, because I'd be like, I want to go back to me as a 10-year-old, be like, hey, this is because I worship the guy. Like, he's amazing. He's just such a cool guy. And that's why this film had to be good, or I was going to be so disappointed. And it just blew my mind.
We talk a lot about also, sorry to interrupt you. We talk so much about how like every generation has a connection to Al, which is incredible. Like, who else is like David Bowie might be like the other one. Yeah. Like it's really every generation has different albums, has different kind of like zones in which they were obsessed with Weird Al, up into Gen Z. Like, he's still releasing hits. So it's wild. He's really such an amazing American musician.
He absolutely is. All right. So final question. I know you probably talk about the accordion a lot. I'm curious though, how did your views, Leo, change from before you wrote this score about the accordion, writing for the accordion, to after you had finished it and you realized perhaps maybe that the instrument had more dimension, perhaps maybe than you realized? What were your thoughts around that?
The main thing I have realized is the accordion is extremely hard to play, like extremely hard. It's very complicated. You have to press it. There's buttons on one side. There's piano keys on another. I in no way could ever like make 3 sounds on an accordion that make any kind of music. But what we figured out is there's actually kind of a lot you can do with an accordion that in sometimes doesn't even sound like an accordion. Like Zach briefly mentioned this cue that we call Diner Fight. That is this big scene in the movie where it just kind of turns into like a John Wick set piece, and Al goes completely ham on a bunch of goons and like fights them in the kitchen. And it's kind of like this big shift into action music in the score. And we recorded this incredible accordion player named Corey Pesaturo, who is literally the world champion accordion player. He like already knew, he and Al know each other. Like the accordion community is pretty small. And he came over to Zach's place. We sat in Zach's studio and we ran the accordion through Zach's Kemper guitar amp modeling hardware, and then like did all of these rhythms and stuff that would normally be played on like guitar and bass in the context of this kind of action cue, but we did them all on accordion, like it pumping every individual note, which took a second for Corey to get his head around, like, why are these guys making me do this? But it really came out amazing if you listen to the track. But that's also, there's like a bit of like a fun, like almost jazzy solo in the middle of that when like he's like fighting this guy, this chef with a knife. And it's just one of these moments where the accordion kind of shines, and everyone who's seen the movie like is always reaching out to us being like, oh, I heard accordion in the Diner Fight. And like, it just feels like it worked out perfectly and kind of gave the accordion the nod that it needed. We really used it all over the place. In like most of the score is like this 80-piece orchestra classic sound, but there were some spots where we would be like, well, normally we'd have an oboe solo there, but let's use accordion instead. Or like normally we'd have the strings playing this like high arpeggio, but let's use the accordion instead. But it was in the Diner Fight where I feel like we really figured out how to transform it.
We were really given a gift with the accordion, like just the fact that it's so synonymous with Al.
Yeah,
like it was truly a gift, because it was like we immediately had just this tool that we could employ everywhere.
It's like Kermit with the banjo.
Yes,
Right.
Al and the accordion.
They're inseparable. And can you imagine like saying, no, we decided not to go down to use the accordion? You know, like I would be like, really? So
yeah, that'd be crazy.
That'd be crazy. All right. On that note, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. And we'll bring you back now for our group chat.
Cool.